Well, at least 15 deaths have now been confirmed following Saturday's eruption of a nearby volcano, Mount Nyiragongo, in the Democratic Republic of Congo. Hundreds of residents have been returning to their destroyed houses after the occurrence in the eastern region. The river of boiling lava stopped short of Goma, a city of 2 million just south of the volcano. The lava halted near Buhene district, the outskirts of Goma, burying hundreds of houses and even large buildings. This avoided the level of death and destruction witnessed in 2002. Well, on Sunday, crowds were seen with mattresses and other belongings fleeing even before the government's announcement to leave, which came several hours after the eruption started. Many residents headed across the nearby Rwandan border, while others went to higher ground to the west of the city. Rwandan authorities say about 3,000 people had officially crossed in from Goma. Well, the United States is imposing a wide range of restrictions on economic and security assistance to Ethiopia over the conflicts in the Tigray region. U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken also announced visa restrictions on Ethiopian and Eritrean officials and others who are accused of atrocities. Mr. Blinken stressed that the international action is needed to help resolve the crisis, as those involved had taken no meaningful steps to end hostilities. Thousands of people have been killed and many more displaced since the conflicts began 6 months ago. All sides have been accused of numerous human rights abuses. Mozambique's army has foiled an attempted attack by Islamist militants in the northern town of Palma. Palma is near a major gas project run by the French energy giant Total. Now, this attack follows a similar invasion in March when hundreds of militants linked to the Islamic State IS group stormed the town in an attack that left dozens of people dead. President Filipe Nyusi says the weekend's incident saw militants attempt to invade the village of Lumbi in Palma district. He adds that the militants killed 5 of their own who had attempted to defect. Mr. Nyusi made the remarks at a meeting of the governing Frelimo party held in Matola in Maputo province. He says his government is open to foreign support to combat the insurgency in the north, as no one should consider themselves immune or capable of combating terrorism alone. Well, in Mali, some members of the army have teamed up with trainers from the European Union to learn new skills that can give them the upper hand in a battle with Islamist militants that has spanned nearly a decade in the country. Fighters linked to Al-Qaeda and Islamic State have fueled the security crisis in Mali and also across the broader Sahel region. Deadly attacks have seen an 8-fold increase from 2015 to 2020, and over 5 million people have been displaced. The EU has provided training in intelligence, driving explosive detection and artillery to close to 14,000 Malian soldiers since 2012, when French soldiers nearly succeeded in driving Islamist fighters from the country's desert north. But militants have retaken large swaths of north-central Mali and rendered much of the area ungovernable.
We train them in direct fires because in that way we give them the opportunity to support the infantry units a longer distance, and at the same time they don't have to be exposed to the enemy. So we are given the possibility to use the howitzer in the maximum capabilities.
In the meantime, members of Mali's prison service are this week set to launch a 10-day strike that is expected to end on June the 7th. Their protest aims to put pressure on the country's transitional authority to implement a memorandum of understanding signed in December 2020. Members of the country's main trade union, the National Union of Malian Workers, also began a nationwide strike last week to demand better pay. Recent months have seen mounting public anger over the slow pace of reforms by Mali's transitional government. The head of the United Nations Support Mission in Libya, UNSMIL, has called for full accountability for crimes committed during the Libyan conflict, saying that it is the only way to ensure justice and right-based reconciliation in the country. Jan Kubis adds that unless Libya addresses human rights violations perpetrated by all sides in the conflict, then any efforts towards sustainable peace will fail.
Full accountability for crimes is the only way to ensure justice and right-based reconciliation in Libya. Unless Libya addresses violations perpetrated by all sides in the cycles of conflict, then any effort towards sustainable peace will fail. A critical task of Libyan authorities and institutions remains to ensure the holding of parliamentary and presidential elections on the 24th of December, as set out in the LPDF roadmap and called for by the Security Council Resolution 2570. This priority lies at the core of the mandate of the Government of National Unity.
A court in Egypt has denied a request made by the owner of the ship that blocked the Suez Canal in March to have it released. The Ever Given ship owner wanted his vessel to be released pending the determination of another case in which the Suez Canal Authority is seeking compensation for the 6 days blockage. The authority wants the ship to be detained until a deposit of the compensation is paid. It is seeking $916 million in compensation from the Ever Given's owner. The authority says the compensation covers the cost of freeing the ship, damage caused by diversion of ships away from the capital. Well, the VOA's Edward Yeranian joins us live on the program to tell us more on this. Thank you so much, Edward, for speaking to us. Do tell us, what has been the reaction to this? What are Egyptians saying about this matter? It's been like a back and forth situation.
Well, Layo, the general public doesn't follow this situation, no doubt, as closely as the media, international media, and it wasn't really one of the top stories on local media. But of course, we did hear that the head of the Suez Canal Authority gave an interview, and he apparently lowered the figure that Egypt was demanding from the ship owners from $916 million to $550 million. And apparently someone has made the calculation that the contents of the ship at this point are worth $750 million. So of course, if the company or if Egypt is asking $916 million and the ship is only worth $750, obviously they're asking for too much. So I guess the demands have gone down, but at this point, the owners of the ship have not offered that amount, $550 million, and apparently they're offering $150. So I guess we're going to wait until they square the circle and come up with some deal between $150 and $550 million.
Well, with what you've said now, what do we know about what the Suez Canal, would use this money? Would it also pay compensation to other vessels that were affected during, that period in March?
Well, I really doubt that. I don't think Egypt has any legal responsibility to do that, and Egypt is mostly concerned with its own losses. Perhaps that's a bit of a selfish way of looking at things, but I guess countries do that. And the losses of the other parties are, they're liable for their losses. So this is a legal case between the ship owner and the Suez Canal Authority, and it's in an Egyptian court. Now, it's possible someone else takes either of the parties, the ship owner or Egypt, to another jurisdiction for another sort of case, but at this point we haven't seen anything like that happening.
Well, finally, Edward, we know a similar situation has happened. We've had similar blockages of the Suez Canal in the past years. Were the ships also required to, pay compensation?
To be honest with you, I believe the last case where we had a similar incident was in 2017, and I don't recall there being that much of a bone of contention over paying for losses, because it never really reached the stage where it became an international media issue. And I mean, I've been in Egypt since 2008, and I don't remember that 2017 incident reached that stage. Of course, I could be forgetting, but off the top of my head, that's my recollection.
All right, then. Thank you so much. The VOA's Edward Iranian joining us from Cairo.
My pleasure, Lyle.
A 3-day post-interment prayer for the late Nigerian Chief of Army Staff and other departed officers has been held at the Niger Barracks in Abuja, the nation's capital. The prayer session was declared by the Defense Headquarters and attended by wives of the fallen heroes and other family members. The military men were killed after their aircraft crashed last week Friday in Kaduna.
Wives, family members and top government officials gather at the Flag House in Niger Barracks, Abuja, to commence a 3-day prayer for the late Chief of Army Staff and other military officers who died in last Friday's plane crash in Kaduna State. The Director of Islamic Affairs at the Nigeria Army Headquarters leads the prayers, supplicating God on behalf of the fallen soldiers.
La ilaha illallah, subhana rabbika rabbil izzati amma yasifun, wa salamun alal mursalin, walhamdulillahi rabbil alamin.
A condolence register is also opened for the late Chief of Army Staff, and the national flag is flown at half-mast as mourners condole with the families of the departed military officers. It's a solemn occasion, but amidst all of this is the call from the Chief of Defense Staff for all not to be in despair.
I admonished every officer and personnel of the armed forces to take courage, to rise in faith. And I'd like every officer and personnel of the armed forces to remain steadfast, because that which we desire to achieve by way of protecting lives and properties of all Nigerians in line with our constitutional mandates will be achieved.
The 3-day special prayers is an Islamic practice to supplicate Allah on behalf of the fallen heroes.
So, according to the teaching of Islam or custom and tradition, we gather here today to observe 3-day special supplication for them, seeking Allah's forgiveness for them and seeking Allah's guidance for the children they left behind. And we also pray to God Almighty Allah to grant them entrance into paradise. And we also use this opportunity to pray for the country, for everlasting peace and harmony among different religious groups and ethnic groups in this country.
Death of the former army chief and 10 other military officers is coming barely 3 months after some young officers lost their lives in a plane crash in Abuja in February this year.
Dr. Tedros Ghebreyesus of the World Health Organization says the COVID-19 pandemic is being perpetuated by a scandalous inequity in vaccine distribution. While addressing its annual ministerial assembly, Dr. Ghebreyesus urged countries to donate vaccine doses to the COVAX mechanism to inoculate 10% of populations of all countries by September and 30% by the year end. Dr. Tedros also called on vaccine manufacturers to give COVAX the first right of refusal on new volumes of vaccines or to commit 50% of their volumes to COVAX this year.
18 months into the defining health crisis of our age, the world remains in a very dangerous situation. As of today, more cases have been reported so far this year than in the whole of 2020. On current trends, the number of deaths will overtake last year's total within the next 3 weeks. The ongoing vaccine crisis is a scandalous inequity that's perpetuating the pandemic. More than 75% of all vaccines have been administered in just 10 countries. There is no diplomatic way to say it. A small group of countries that make and buy the majority of the world's vaccines control the fate of the rest of the world.
The Executive Director of the United Nations Population Fund has concluded a 5-day visit to the Democratic Republic of Congo. Head of the UN Sexual and Reproductive Health Agency undertook a mission to galvanize solidarity for the people in the country with a special focus on women and girls. During her visit, she met with government officials, UN partners and representatives of government and civil societies. She also met with Nobel laureate Dr. Denis Mukwege and visited his Panzi Hospital to see the wards for survivors of sexual violence.
UNFPA works to defend the dignity of women and girls. We work in Congo specifically to assure that mothers don't die while giving birth. In particular now, I'm also very interested in how women are coping with what I call the second pandemic of gender-based violence. The message of UNFPA is always that in order for us to move forward, that person has to have her dignity. She shouldn't be convinced that no one cares, because we care, and so much of the health system is caring for her. So UNFPA, working with the Panzi Foundation and with others in that community, are looking for ways of preventing the disaster, if you will, of fistula, of gender-based violence, of rape in conflict, so that it will no longer be necessary for us to join hands to do the work of surgical and, mental repair.
Finally, on the show today, 6 orphaned elephant calves have been translocated 900 kilometers from Harare to a forest reserve near Victoria Falls in Zimbabwe. Each calf was rescued by Wild is Life and the International Fund for Animal Welfare and has spent up to 3 years receiving round-the-clock care from staff at the Ifo Zen Project Rehabilitation Center just outside of Harare.
Out the way.
After years of nurturing and preparation, 6 orphaned elephant calves are returning to their roots in a protected forest reserve near Victoria Falls in Zimbabwe. The calves were rescued by Wild is Life, WIL, and the International Fund for Animal Welfare from a variety of life-threatening situations after being orphaned in the wild. They have been receiving constant care at the IFAW Zimbabwe Elephant Nursery Project Rehabilitation Center outside the capital, Harare. The WIL representatives say the 900-kilometer journey has allowed the 3 to 5-year-old calves to begin the second phase of their lives, learning to thrive on their own back in the wilderness.
Some of the key, thematic areas that we focus on include law enforcement support, research, but something that really sits well and aligns to our holistic approach to wildlife rescue, rehabilitation, and eventual release of elephants back into the wild is the partnership that we also have with Zimbabwe Elephant Nursery and Wild is Life for the panda Masua release work that we are doing.
When they arrived, the calves were offloaded into an enclosure at the IFAW Zen Project Soft Release Facility at Panda Masu. They were introduced to 9 older rescue elephants at sunrise. The WIL team says the calves and adult elephants will be taken on daily bushwalks, interact with wild elephants, and allowed someday to wander off and join a herd or form their own. One of the new arrivals wears a tracking collar. The calves are named Marcy, Jack, Johnny, Tessa, Mana, and Amira.
Zimbabwe presents a very interesting opportunity for landscape conservation for two reasons. The first one, it is home to the second largest elephant population in the world. And also the government does have, regards to wildlife conservation as an anchor for tourism development and socioeconomic development, which is good for the communities.
The International Union for Conservation of Nature's latest survey said the savanna elephant was endangered and the much smaller, lighter forest elephant was critically endangered, its highest category before extinction in the wild. The 6 orphans are savanna elephants.
That's it on the program for today. Thank you so much for watching. I'm Layo Adegoke.